a cashier. Benjamin, nothing less. I was broke, that was last year. Don't change on me. I never switched up. Been down to day one. Straight social. People change on me.
Welcome everybody to DBT, No Black Box Live. We are back in the studio. I'm Stefania Gallegos.
I am Mike Carter, aka Paperboy, aka Short Texas, and we have a special guest tonight. Go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Good to see you, Michael. Good to see you, Stefania. I'm John Ronquillo. I am so happy to join you from Stanley Marketplace in Northern Aurora. Hopefully the background noise isn't too much.
No, we're good. You're good.
We're gonna
go ahead.
Now we have a skeleton crew tonight, but we had spoken to John a couple of weeks ago, and is this your second or third time being on?
I guess you could say it's technically my second. The first time there were technical difficulties, so it was a special recorded edition of DBT. So this is my first opportunity to be live with you all. So, and happy to be here.
Okay, great. Like I said, we got the skeleton crew going today, but we are going to sit down and talk to John about some of the stuff going on and talk about his campaign and where he's at right now. Go ahead, Stefania. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I had an itch. However, yeah. So John Ronquillo is running for Aurora City government at large, right? Aurora City Council.
Correct. That's right.
So how's the campaign going?
From my standpoint, I think it's going great. I mean, obviously, I get that question asked a lot. And as we are approaching about 3 weeks out from Election Day, ballots will be mailed this week. So people will be seeing them pop into their boxes in a matter of days. But from my point of view, I've got a great team who is working on our behalf. We've got some good folks who have come together. We're very good at mobilizing out here. And so I think we've got a lot of energy, people who are carrying the message forward, and we're excited about the changes and about the potential that Aurora has, and we're going to keep moving regardless. So things are good.
Nice, that's right. So ballots, everybody, like John said, they go out this Friday, so please look for them. It is in everyone's best interest to make sure that they are voting their interest. So if you live in Aurora, make sure you know who your candidates are. Go ahead.
What are you hearing out on the? Okay, I mean, this is the home stretch. We're 20-something days out. What are you hearing as you're going door to door? What are they asking? What questions are you getting the most of?
Yeah, excellent question. Because it's a mix. It really depends sometimes on the neighborhood. I think there are a lot of public safety concerns for sure. Depending on the neighborhood, again, people will talk about traffic issues. Something, that has come up a lot on doors is catalytic converter thefts. And, property crimes aren't acceptable. It's an issue that we're going to have to confront. There are a lot of folks who want to talk about affordable housing. There are a lot of folks who want to talk about issues around homelessness. I would say those are some of the big three that people express when I'm out on doors. And fortunately, I'm very happy to say that most of these folks are ready and willing to engage. We're having good conversations. When we first launched our field program and started knocking on doors back in June, people were really excited to talk. I think, at that point in time in the summer, we were seeing COVID numbers decrease, seeing the trend go in the right direction. And so I think people were excited to just have people on their doors. Unfortunately, we've seen those numbers come back up, so we've approached people with caution. But the conversations we've been having have been critical. They haven't all been easy, and that's good because we need people to hold their elected officials accountable. We need them to challenge us and make sure that we are doing the best we can. I say we because I'm manifesting that I want to win this. But at the end of the day, we also have to be able to acquit ourselves well, that we are prepared to do this, that we're going to be the sound mind and steady hands that are going to lead the city into the future.
Nice. What pushback are you getting from the people on the doors, other than, homeless? I'd love to have you go into catalytic converters and the fact that people are stealing those. I think that's so random, and it's not just Aurora, but Are you
Right.
getting any pushback from the people that you're knocking on those doors?
Every now and then there's somebody who has expressed some feelings about the trust they can put in government right now.
Okay.
A lot of them, some of the questions that they've asked have been very direct, and they've said, what are you going to do about the way the council has been acting? What are you going to do to ensure that we don't spend several hours over several days voting for a Ward 2 vacancy replacement that never happened? What are you going to do to ensure that the city is not going to willfully violate its charter? And those are some big questions that probably didn't come to the surface before all of these examples that they've given. I think there are a lot of people in the community who are really concerned about the professionalism and civility that we, as stewards of the public trust, should be acting with. And I think my own background, I'm a professor at CU Denver in the School of Public Affairs. For the past 10 years, I have been a researcher, a teacher of public servants, and trying to do my best to teach them how to be those, to be the backbone of government, to be the civil servants who are the ones actually carrying out the day-to-day duties and making sure that residents and people are served well by their government. And I think we have definitely regressed quite a bit in terms of our civility, and that's something that I want to prioritize for sure. It's a nonpartisan race, and every time I say that, people will, shrug, put up the air quotes, roll their eyes, and say nonpartisan. Sure, and I get it. All of us have a political party, or most of us do. There are in some other races some unaffiliated folks who are running. But at the end of the day, if we're not putting the community first, then we're not going to make the progress that we need to make. And I definitely think that we need to make some progress in the area of civility, being able to disagree with each other without making it personal, and putting the business of the city at the forefront before we, display any behaviors that might be unbecoming.
And I love the fact that you brought up Ward 2, and it's the ward I live in, and and you use the word, the dysfunction of the city council, and the fact that I don't have a city council member at this point. I have an at large, but I don't have a city council member. Talk to me about how you're going to work on that dysfunction. We know it exists. Have you spoken to or reached out to any of the current board members or any of the current people running to at least head that dysfunction off at the pass?
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that the word condition sometimes I think has a pejorative context, but I feel that in my role in a school of public affairs, instructing students that come into my classroom, I've said this often, I don't have a list where I check off an R or a D after their last name, right? They come into my classroom for the same thing. And it's my obligation as an educator to make sure that they receive the same thing, respective of where they come from, what their beliefs are. And so I want us to be a functional council. I want us to treat each other with civility. And I'll be honest, I think in terms of the candidates that I've interacted with on both sides, we've kept it civil. We've been polite. Of course, there are going to be disagreements. Of course, people have said things that, might imply certain things. But for the most part, when we're at forums, when we cross paths at events, we have been very cordial, very friendly with each other. And look, the way I see it is these folks who are competitors, for lack of better words, they have families, they have kids who idolize them. And I don't want to be the person that's going to throw a bomb or lob an attack to drag them down. That's just not how I operate. And I think that the best way that we can start to restore some of the civility is to just really make a concentrated effort at being an exemplar, right? And so when it comes to issues of city council, again, I want to put the community aspects in square focus. I think that that's important. And if we're going to call it a nonpartisan race, then there are aspects of the nonpartisanship that I want to bring to the fore. And I'll be honest, I have reached across the aisle already. I've had great conversations with existing members like Curtis Gardner. I have had great conversations with former Mayor Bob Laguerre because I think their insights would be valuable. And because if people are mentioning these issues to me on the doors, I want to be proactive about it. And I realize that it's something that I think could enhance the council's ability to work and make progress if we treat each other with a bit more respect. And this is something that is being resident driven. It's something that they're paying attention to. And I believe that, I can bring a lot to the table when it comes to that civility and professionalism.
So I have a question then, because I want to go back to a little bit to you were talking about, putting the community first. This Aurora is very diverse. It's very, it's a quite a large community. I saw in your bio, are part of the DEI, the diversity and equity and inclusion. Talk to us about that, and what are your plans with that in the position that you hope to attain with the Aurora City Council?
Yeah, thank you, Stefania. That's something that is, very important to me in my role. When I tell people that I'm a professor, a lot of people automatically revert to teaching. And at a research university, actually, only 40% of my time is teaching. I love being a teacher. It's important. My classes are incredibly diverse. But, this is an area of research that's very important to me. But in terms of the area of practice, and making our higher education spaces more accessible and more welcoming is incredibly important to me. So yes, last year I was able to be one of the co-chairs of the Equity Task Force. We were tasked by our new Chancellor, Michelle Marks, with what I've characterized as an equity audit to basically look and examine practices and issues throughout the university from top to bottom, faculty, staff, and students, and see what we could do to improve. And there are a lot of issues. There were a lot of difficult conversations that were had, but important and critical conversations to make sure that we were advancing the mission of the university. This was also part of our strategic program, or rather our 2030 strategic plan. And so we served a dual function as one of what was called a vision team around improving our inclusive excellence. And I'm very proud of the fact that we were able to get the chancellor commit to a multi-million-dollar investment in our DEI programs. We've seen a handful of things that have already been instituted, which is really exciting because sometimes in strategic planning processes, you talk and talk and talk, and you aspire to a lot and nothing gets done. Right. We are already seeing results from this, which is really exciting. Okay. But beyond that, I and the folks that I worked with, we're all very proud of the fact that out of this process emerged the number one goal in that strategic plan was to become the nation's first equity-serving institution, which is going to shake up some elements of higher education because in many cases they've been prohibitive. As somebody who is multi-ethnic, multicultural, somebody who code switches a lot, I didn't have access to a lot of avenues to know what higher education options were available to me. And I, in addition to being a professor at CU Denver, I also direct a youth leadership program for a New York City-based nonprofit called Leadership Enterprise for a Diverse America. And so building on my own background, where I've come from, being in the margins and knowing what it feels like to kind of be ostracized and left out, I really want to devote my life's work to making sure that other people aren't left out. So when I do that, whether it's in my role as a professor and practitioner at the university, promoting our DEI issues there, whether it's through the Youth Leadership Institute that I direct, I want to do whatever I can to prepare our future leaders to lead in a space that requires us to understand what equity really means, to promote inclusion, and to realize that everyone deserves a fair chance at improving their lives through education. I firmly believe that the city of Aurora, for one, if you look at the city as a whole, everyone talks about our diversity. And it's one thing to tout it, but I've also said that we need to be about it. We need to be involved. We need to be in those communities. We need to highlight, the amazing things that our diverse communities bring to the table. And I'm talking full spectrum diversity. I'm talking, depending on where you're from. We mentioned that Aurora, 1 in 5 Aurorans were born outside of the United States. We have a lot of elements of diversity. We have a lot of socioeconomic diversity, which allows people to move to Aurora. And, at least when I moved here, better part of a decade ago, it allowed us to be very comfortable. And I think people are feeling the pinch there too. So we tout a lot of the diverse aspects of Aurora, but I think there are areas where we can improve strategically. And I do think that the city could benefit from an equity plan as well. I think it's a word that people talk about a lot, but we don't spend a lot of time really fleshing out what that definition is.
Right.
And I think that it's important to understand that it's opportunity, it's tools, it's things like the new NAACP Economic Development Center, right, that is giving people an opportunity to do something incredibly empowering. That's what I love about small business and about people who are entrepreneurial and innovative, is the ability to leverage your creative faculties to create something, to provide value to people, to provide jobs to people. And there's so much tremendous potential for that in Aurora. And I've said numerous times that I want us to invest in our small businesses, and I would like to see us make sure that we're also investing in businesses that are owned by people of color, businesses that are women owned, and businesses that are immigrant owned, because it does boost our local economy and it does give people an opportunity to really showcase some amazing things and make Aurora an even more notable city to pay attention to and to visit.
Okay. I'd like to see equity and inclusion become an action word within Aurora City government, and I hope that that's kind of your plan. Should you, and when you win the selection.
Well, thank you, Stefania. And there are so many areas where we need it.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of instances where there was a rise in hate crimes against our Asian and Asian American community, right? And there are people who don't feel safe enough to report things. And everybody, I say this often, and there's multiple dimensions to it, but I believe that everyone who lives in Aurora should be able to feel safe. I believe they should feel safe in their homes. I believe they should be safe in their jobs, and they should feel safe in the community. And I think that there are issues around equity that are also issues that can bolster our safety. So I agree with you 100%.
And the only thing I will say to that safety aspect of it is, coming from my perspective, my point of view, dope black thoughts, being a black woman in Aurora, sometimes we need to feel safe from police and police brutality, and that's just, it is what it is in Aurora. So,
and that's a conversation that we have to have. It's a conversation that unfortunately some people don't want to have.
Yeah.
And the sad part of that is we have far too many instances of things that have happened in our community that should blatantly demonstrate the need to dig in and have those tough conversations. There are folks around those communities who seem to want to just, sweep it under the rug, and we can't do that. We can't have any more black families mistaken as car thieves and forced to lay face down on a hot blacktop.
Absolutely.
We can't have another Kyle Vincent happen where he is savagely beaten while another officer stands by. And
so safety all around.
Yeah, and I struggle sometimes, still going back to Elijah McClain. We just it can't happen anymore.
Right. There are too many missteps in that case that should not have happened, and that loss of life. I feel your pain and I see your pain, and so that should not be. And so safety for everyone in the community.
Well, oversight. What is where are you at on oversight of APD? Period.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we're going to talk about this, because we have to. Because I've asked for conversations before. I've approached both the president of the Aurora Police Association. I've approached the president of the Fraternal Order of Police. They've made their endorsements. They've chosen the candidates that they want to support, and that's fine. I'm not asking for an endorsement. I was asking for a conversation, because I'm willing to do whatever we need to do to build those bridges to at least talk. And I'm doing that as objectively as possible, to say that I want to go in, I want to listen, I want to hear what your members are concerned about, what your officers are concerned about. And we know recently that both of those organizations took a vote of no confidence against Chief Vanessa Wilson. That's a problem on numerous fronts. When that large of a swath of uniformed personnel, of sworn officers of the law, are voicing no confidence, that puts us in a difficult situation. I have read a significant portion of the Attorney General's report that was released in September. that detailed a lot of the findings. I think a lot of it was directed towards APD. And I've expressed my support for the consent decree that was suggested. In particular, my support for the consent decree is because I don't want the court to force us. I want us to take the good faith effort to do what we need to do as a city to do better. I think, Michael, when you talk about oversight, there are a number of things, and for whatever reason, the glacial pace of this has been, former council member Nicole Johnson had tried to make strides in this area in terms of one of the committees that was created around that. I know that we're going to have an independent monitor soon. I think that independent monitors can potentially be a good way. Earlier I talked about the equity audit at the university. I think independent monitors are charged with auditing the behaviors and the practices and the standards of our police personnel. But I do believe that there should be more citizen oversight. I think citizen oversight in terms of the effectiveness of that independent monitor, but also, what's going on with an APD. I also believe that our Civil Service Commission can sometimes be a hindrance to the police chief wanting to bring about discipline and potential terminations, personnel changes, basically to bring about accountability. And I'll also say that the debate that people have been having, it's not a secret that we've had a lot of officers leave APD, and that there's a general sentiment among some folks that say, they don't feel supported, so they're leaving, right? This is not endemic to Aurora. It's happening in a lot of places. We are seeing a decrease in law enforcement personnel. But at the end of the day, this is our backyard, this is our home, and we need to focus here and realize that public safety is something that everyone who lives here is entitled to. Mm-hmm. And so I think, it's tough. It's tough because at the end of the day, I want to support the people who are charged with keeping Aurora residents safe. In terms of endorsements, I am endorsed by IAFF 1290, the Firefighters Union. I feel like I've had an opportunity to reach in and understand some of their needs and concerns. I feel like I've gotten a decent bird's eye view about their call volume, their funding or lack thereof, and how they work with police, and just the constraints that have been placed on these personnel. And given my background, given that I am a scholar of public and nonprofit management, I teach, current and future public servants, and I've dug into human resource management as well. And so one of the things that I've mentioned on a couple of occasions is seeing what we can do about putting into place an employee retention plan with our police and fire personnel. And there would be a lot to unpack there. There would be a lot to construct. Because there does need to be, a mechanism of accountability as well. And
I gotta, before you get past it, I gotta go into. You explain to me your position on police officers leaving because of more oversight. Police officers leaving because they don't want to have the additional oversight that is going to come with the monitor and maybe another layer of the city council being on top of them. Talk to me about that.
Sure. Well, you're mentioning layers, right? And as a member of city council, there's language in the charter, that talks about the powers withheld from council, right? So the council has a limited number of city staff that they can direct. So, the police chief, the fire chief, other, division heads all report to one of the deputy city managers who then report to the city manager, right? We are in a council manager form of government. So council has very specific responsibilities and duties, as do the professional staff who run the day-to-day operations of the city. And so I think this is a narrative that has come about in discussions. A gentleman at a function recently just asked me, what I would suggest to the city manager in lieu of the two organizations voting, saying that they didn't have confidence in Chief Wilson. It speaks a lot to that, and I asked, a couple of questions in return about previous police chiefs because, she's been there for just over a year. If I was speaking very plainly, she inherited a mess. She was given a police department that had a lot of stressors already, a lot of things that had happened that she wanted to correct. I feel like she did her best to listen to people and tried to act expeditiously. I think there are issues around Elijah, for example, in terms of the three officers that were involved there, why they remained on the payroll of APD for as long as they have. And yet when the issue around Kyle Vincent happened, she was very quick to issue warrants for the two officers who were involved for their arrest. One of the officers resigned before he was able to be terminated, but the other officer was in fact terminated. And she even said, what you saw on camera wasn't policing. What you saw was a felony being committed. Examples like that, let me underline examples, I think are good to demonstrate accountability and accountability that we need. And the gentleman at this event, outlined the fact that officers are leaving now more under Chief Wilson because of the accountability, as you mentioned, Michael. So, I don't know, man. I just have to wonder if some of these officers are taking a personal inventory and wondering, can I carry out my duties with what's happening? Because there are demands, and I was going to say there are calls for accountability. There are demands for accountability to ensure that all the examples that we spoke of previously don't continue to persist in the city of Aurora and in all the other cities in the United States where this has been prevalent. Right? We know too many names. We can rattle off far too many names of people who have been brutalized and people who have been killed. And if we don't turn this corner, then I don't know what's going to happen. But I've said this before too, and I'll say it again. I do not think that it is a zero-sum game, that you either support your uniformed personnel or you hold them accountability, or you hold them to account. I am happy to support any law enforcement agency as long as they hold themselves to account. We, as citizens, as civilians, as residents, there's only so much that we can do to hold them to account. So if they hold themselves to account at a higher level than we do, then I think we can actually see progress. And maybe that's just the optimist in me, because I am hopeful. And if we don't hold out hope for change, then we won't make any progress.
Have you had, that being the next level, have you had any conversations with either of the district attorneys that are either the 18th or I believe the 17th in Adams? Have you had any conversations? Because these officers, these officers were putting together files and criminal charges that were then being either substantiated by, those district attorney's office. Have you had conversations with those district attorney's office just preliminarily?
Not in depth. I mean, I've met Brian Mason in the 17th. I've met John Kellner in the 18th. Randomly, I am also on the board of directors for the Arapahoe County Foundation. Not too long ago, we actually gave District Attorney Kellner a little bit of money. I think he's cobbled it from multiple sources for one of his diversion programs, which I'm certainly supportive of. I don't think that that's a partisan issue. I think that especially in our area, we need those types of programs. But I would most certainly look forward to conversations with both of those gentlemen in the near future. And hopefully, if I'm successful, I think that would be a necessary conversation for us to have. But I can say that I do find both of these gentlemen well-equipped and prepared to do what they can to lead as it comes to issues of justice and fairness. I have hope. Again, they've only been in their respective roles for not quite a year. So I'm hopeful, but I would look forward to conversations along those lines.
Yeah, there's one that police the police. Go ahead, Michael.
No, I was going to ask specifically on diversion, understanding that you're going to get pushback from the populace for diversion. The individual who is in diversion is going to obviously love the opportunity and hopefully take advantage of it, but the populace is going to be like, why is this individual getting diversion?
Right. Right, and I mean, honestly, there are situational aspects to that, right? I think that ultimately, if our justice system is remotely fair, that each of these cases is going to be examined in detail, so that for whatever reason, when one of them is sent to diversion, that it is merited. Right? I want to believe that our justice system is fair. I think there are many cases where we've determined where there are probably a lot of questions about the fairness of that. But I also do believe that in Aurora and even further writ large, that we should be focusing on more serious, more violent, more heinous crimes. I think that there are issues out there um, where we could do better, where diversion is part of that. I've also touted the Aurora Mobile Response Team as well, recent pilot program, very similar to Denver's STAR program that sends a paramedic, a counselor, maybe a social worker to calls that may involve, addiction, homelessness, things of that nature, that they can de-escalate and handle without a uniformed officer, without personnel who are not trained for those situations, right? Who don't have the counseling or the social work background to help people who are not posing an imminent threat. And so I think, given the fact that we are, a big city, we have to confront these issues, and where there are opportunities to showcase the benefits of what diversion can do, then we should do that. And people want to get into partisanship. Mr. Kellner's a Republican. I'm a registered Democrat. I told you I didn't think it's a partisan issue. I think where we can afford people the opportunity to improve themselves, we should do that. I believe in restorative justice. I've seen people transform their lives after some of the past mistakes that they have made after incarceration, to do tremendous things in this community. I believe in second chances.
Good. Good. I am a touter of diversion. That's why I want to make sure. Good. Stefania?
No, go ahead. The conversation about diversion and equity and inclusion is always at the forefront of my passions, and so holding police accountable, where equity and inclusion come into play. You got a lot ahead of you with that. That's a big bite that you're gonna.
It is a big bite.
Yeah. So,
it is.
Yeah. Good luck.
Well, and the thing is, Stefania, is
I think the conversation absolutely needs to be had with Kellner and Mason on policing the police. And I'm not saying that because I believe that all police are inherently bad. I don't believe that at all. I just believe that there needs to be oversight, and for those who are willing to have that oversight, would show that they have nothing to hide.
Yeah.
That they want police to have that respectful position that they had so many years ago. Respectful position.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. Right. When I was a kid, and I can't speak for everyone, but more often than not, I'll see head nods when I say this. I was taught to respect police. I was taught to see them as people who were responsible adults who had my best interest. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think I agree with you. My father was a military policeman. At an early stage of my career, I was a policy analyst with the Arizona Association of Counties, and one of my constituent groups was the Arizona Sheriff's Association. And so I lobbied on behalf of county sheriffs in Arizona who, many of whom I thought were salt of the earth individuals. They didn't care about the party labels. They did care about keeping people safe in their counties. And 13 at the time, 13 of the 15 counties, there are only 15 counties in Arizona, were by and large rural sheriffs. So they were still uniformed and patrolling themselves. And so I got that firsthand look. And I'm a learner by doing it, by observing,
Right.
And those types of things give me insights. And so despite the fact that I've not been able to connect with, these police organizations, I have been able to connect with Chief Wilson. I have been able to connect with the Chief Deputy. I have been able to connect with a lot of officers who I have conversations with. I want to know how they feel. And I tell them that I support them right there in that moment when we're just having a one-on-one conversation. with the civilian and the uniformed officer, they're doing something that I don't know that I could do, to tell you the truth.
Mm.
And I have a lot of former students who, they're veterans, they're police personnel, they're fire personnel. And I do respect them tremendously. And the ones that I know, the ones who I've gotten the chance to know, I know in my heart that they're doing it for the right reasons.
Mhm.
And so I feel that we're in an era where we can talk and explain our stances on this all the time. But we're going to take the soundbite that is going to be the pejorative soundbite that's going to give us the opportunity to tense up. They're going to take the parts that say that I want accountability, and they're going to take that to say that I don't support the police. Again,
Right.
It's not a zero-sum game.
Right.
Trust us. We know on DBT about somebody taking a soundbite and trying to use it against you.
Right. Out of context.
Yeah, completely out of context.
Right. And I agree with you. My father was a retired federal marshal. Law enforcement has been in my family as well. And it was such a respectful position at one point in time, but that changed because they allowed in bad actors. So cleaning it up shouldn't be a problem for those who want that respect back.
I don't know if they allowed in bad actors. What I would say is they allowed them to stay.
That too.
They allowed them to stay. Once they got in, that it became, instead of getting rid of those bad actors, they were allowed to stay and become coddled almost.
Yeah.
But
right.
No. Before he goes, because I'm out here in Ward 2, I need to know, especially metro districts and developers.
Yeah.
What are you going to do when they come to you, and they're about to do it in Aurora Highlands? They come to you and they put together this harebrained scheme that's going to make generational wealth for one person, and the taxpayers are going to be stuck with it for not just generations, but for the lifetime of a developer.
Right. I mean, I think there are people out there who will position metro districts as an even, sort of smaller arm of local government. And in a way, it is. And I would encourage anybody who lives in a metro district to do whatever you can do to make sure that you are as well versed as possible on what the intent of metro districts is. And I understand in terms of us talking about our growth, when we talk about making sure that we have a solid infrastructure, that metro districts are a tool that we leverage to ensure that that infrastructure and all those nice things that we want can come to fruition. But I will say, after those three big things that I talked about with people on doors, there are people out in your neck of the woods, Mr. Carter, that do talk about metro districts a lot, and who feel that there needs to be more transparency. And I realize that I believe it was Senate Bill 262 last year that passed to kind of bring, or at least the idea was to bring more transparency to metro districts, to make sure that residents were notified of opportunities to get involved and to serve and to lead these organizations, that any bond issues, any tax issues, any finance issues were made known. I think a lot of people feel hoodwinked sometimes when all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, I got this additional cost to shoulder. I had no idea about it, right? Again, as somebody who is a big proponent of accountability and transparency, I think metro districts in particular need to be transparent. People need to know what they're getting into, right? And so I think, I've talked to a handful of people about, going back to equity issues that they can be good, but there's a lot of pushback. There are a lot of folks who don't like the idea of metro districts. I had a good conversation with the Metro Housing Coalition. They did not endorse me, and that's totally fine. Again, all I want are conversations, and I thought the conversation that we had was a good one. But I know that there are very staunch proponents of metro districts out there, and I know that there are people who are adamantly opposed to some of the levers they've been pulling. I can't profess to be the number one expert in this, but it is something that we do need to address. It is something that I am learning more about. It is something that I'm grateful for resident contacts such as yourself to provide me the knowledge and the information in terms of how people feel about it. But also, I think there are some concerns. One gentleman not too far from where you live, Michael, talked about when the developers came in, the promises to build certain elements of infrastructure. Like we'll throw sidewalks in for free. Well, those sidewalks aren't there, right? And we still have issues to deal with in some of those far-flung neighborhoods where, you might have a gas station, but you have to drive into town to a grocery store. You don't have access to public transit. A gentleman who said, we really love the trail, the pathway that runs along the E470. He's an avid cyclist, but we don't even have an access point, so we have to drive to get to it. That defeats the point of recreational cycling, of commuting as a cyclist when the weather's appropriate. And so there are a lot of issues around that I think that need to be brought into focus squarely.
I don't want to get you derailed. I think you did a great job tonight. But I just believe with the metro districts, there's a price for growth, and I just don't believe citizens understand that price until they get into a metro district. And you do not have a choice. And I don't believe people understand that price for growth until they're actually in it, and there's not a whole lot they can do. And that's the only thing I would ask for from a city council member is, okay, up front, make sure everybody knows what's going on, especially when the developers are the ones who are financing, creating, and implementing this metro district. I just believe if you do all three of those things, you're probably doing it for your own benefit.
Yeah.
And again, things that I want to learn about, because I think when we also look at needs that the city has, there is a need for housing inventory as well, right? And so I think depending on where these growth points are, I've talked to former members of the council who have talked about how difficult infill projects are, right? When we're trying to revitalize older neighborhoods, for example. And obviously we have the land and the resources to expand. We've seen our expansion east of the 470, and that's going to continue, right? We've seen communities, you mentioned Aurora Highlands. We've got the Oakwood Homes subdivision that's going up in Green Valley Ranch East. We've got Painted Prairie. We've got lots of expansion that's going to happen. And, on the one hand, it is very exciting because these are beautiful homes that people are going to populate, and they're going to continue to build our community. And it's exciting. It's exciting in a lot of ways. But there are growing pains, too. And I think sometimes metro districts can be a good manifestation of that.
As long as we're making it clear for the people. But the people also have to seek the knowledge. They have to seek it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is on so many levels too, right, Stefania? It's like get informed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Communication, get informed. You crushed it. It's almost out of time. You got to hit us with the. Go ahead, Savannah. I was going to ask you for a No Black Thought, but if you got more, go.
Before that, how do people find you? What do you need for your campaign? How do they find you? And where should they go to do that?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and it was great to be on again with you both today.
Thanks for
absolutely. My website is www.johnronquillo.com. My name right there is spelled for you. You can go to my website. You can see some snippets of my platform. You can see who's endorsed me in this race. And there is definitely a tab to contribute. We're in the home stretch, right? And, we've got some competitors in this race that have brought in a lot of money. And I'm pretty proud with my haul, compared to where some of our large candidates have been in past campaign cycles. We've definitely upped our ante and worked really hard to make sure that we have the resources that we can to take our message to the voters of Aurora. But we can always use more. We can always use more help. So if people can give $25, $15, $10, every little bit helps us finish our program in terms of outreach to the people who live in our great city. If you can't commit financial resources, that's okay. If I'm somebody that you can get behind, we invite you to come out and knock doors with us.
Yes.
We meet every weekend, every Saturday in particular at 10 a.m. at Highline Park and Ball Fields, right there at Peoria and 2nd. We meet at the northern part of the field. Please feel free to join us. Find us on social media. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at John, the number 4, Aurora. and join with us. We're fun. We have a lot of fun because we realize what tremendous potential exists in this city, and we're excited about the energy that people have, the zest and the zeal that they have for their neighborhoods, for their community. We want to keep that up, right? We've got challenges. We have difficult issues that we have to confront. We absolutely have to confront. But I think it's also time for us to just get excited about living here, just having pride and energy, and to see what it's like to build community, and to look back retrospectively and think like, I helped that guy. And I'm hopeful, fingers crossed, that we're going to do good things for our community, so people can feel that investment, right? That they were able to get behind somebody who's going to work their behind off for them, is what I was going to say. And that's my plan. That's my plan.
Well,
I am so bad at this. Yes, yes, John. Yes. I'll put your information in the chat. There's a huge rally on Saturday.
Yes.
Lots of volunteers on the Highline Canal. I'll put that information in the chat as well. I'm sorry.
Please do. And we're excited to have Congressman Jason Crow, who has endorsed me. We're going to have State Representative Aman Judah, who has endorsed me. We're going to have State Representative Mike Weissman, who has endorsed me. 3 good people, good friends, model public servants, and I'm proud to have their support. So we're going to have a great rally. So please join us Saturday at 10 a.m. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to get this message out to Aurora voters, and we're going to win.
Good. Like he said, take pride in your community. Show up.
He still didn't give us a dope black thought.
Let's hear it. John, do you have a dope black thought?
Is it okay if I share the one that I shared last time?
You can share whatever you want. Yeah.
Because I've been thinking about this a lot, because I've been using the word healing, and I don't know how many people saw my last appearance, so I want to say it now. I have a good friend. His name is Edgar Villanueva. He is a philanthropy practitioner. He wrote a book called Decolonizing Wealth that I really love. And the inscription at the beginning is a quote from Beyonce that resonates well with me, and it resonates well, I think, with our community. And it comes from her Lemonade album, and it says, if you're going to heal, let it be glorious. We've got a lot of healing to do in this community, so let's get to it and let it be glorious.
Let it be glorious. I like it.
Great job. Great job, sir.
Well, thanks for coming on, Mr. Ronquillo. Good luck in everything that you have coming into your future. Good luck.
Thank you both.
And
do we still cue the music?
I'm going to cue the music. We'll see you soon.
Thank you both. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
What is love? It's a drug. Let it rotate, then get back in it. Calling me an Uber just to get back to you. Use the cash out like pay, I send it. Is it really worth the wait? I don't get it. Dividing gravitate. Taste that wet emoji got me higher.